In our series of pre-election segments, we take a look at question 3 tonight on the conditions of farm animals. A yes vote would ban the more restrictive confinement of animals such as pigs, calves, and chickens. Making the case for that vote is our guest, the Vice President of Farm Animal Protection with the Humane Society of the United States, Paul Shapiro. Thank you very much for being with us, Paul.
Great to be with you, Chris.
First of all, I guess the two main reasons I hear over and over again for a yes vote is about the welfare of the animals, but also about the healthy food that the humans need. So explain how those two fit together.
Sure, they fit together like a glove, Chris. Right now in Massachusetts, there are no rules for how farm animals can be treated. It's perfectly legal to take a calf or a pig and put the animal inside of a crate where she can't even turn around for her entire life. That's cruel, it's inhumane, and it's bad for food safety. The animal cruelty alone is enough to vote yes on question 3 to prevent that type of abuse. But the reason why the food safety groups like the Center for Food Safety and Consumer Federation of America endorse the yes vote on question 3 is because when you overcrowd animals and confine them to the point where they can't move their whole lives, it increases the risk of foodborne pathogens like E. coli and Salmonella. So voting yes on 3 is certainly good to do for animals, and it's good to do for us as well.
Well, it stands to reason that you have that risk of disease. Do we know if this has actually been the case? Have we more of these cases than we used to because of the way we treat the animals?
Yes, study after study after study shows the correlation between cage confinement of, for example, egg-laying chickens and increased risk of Salmonella.
Now, I imagine one reason producers treat animals this way is not so much out of cruelty as out of the desire to get the biggest bang for the buck too. So isn't there a price to be paid for that, whether by the producers or the consumers?
Well, you're right, Chris. Certainly nobody is confining animals in cages because they want to commit cruelty to animals. The problem is, though, it does cause an enormous amount of animal suffering. And the reason why they do it is to try to squeeze every penny out that they can. But what the egg industry's own economic analyses show is that going to cage-free systems would only cost egg producers about a penny or two more per egg to go cage-free. So a penny or two more for better animal welfare, less animal cruelty, and better food safety. When the Boston Globe looked at this issue and decided why it's endorsing the yes on 3 vote, it said that the entire cost to the average Massachusetts consumer of passing question 3 would be around the cost of one movie ticket per year.
And what about the cost of animals raised for meat, like pigs or chickens or veal or something like that? Wouldn't that make a big difference?
No, in fact, the Boston Globe analysis was comprehensive of all the animals who would be covered by question 3, but in the pork industry, it's customary to take a pig, artificially inseminate her, put her inside of a crate where she can't turn around her whole life. She bites at the bars maniacally in her cage. She finally just gives up. She realizes she's never getting out. They're kept in a space about like the size of a coffin, barely larger than their own body. And they exhibit learned helplessness. I mean, they just know they're never getting out, and they would go into like a catatonic state. It's horrible. It's a horrible act of cruelty. But the producers who have moved away from that practice and given their pigs more space have found that there's really not much of a productivity difference whatsoever. Certainly there's better animal welfare, but they haven't really found much of a difference from productivity or cost effectiveness.
We're talking with Paul Shapiro from the Humane Society. Paul, what about the effect on things produced or shipped in from other states? Does this law regulate that in any way? I mean, this measure, if there's a yes vote that wins?
Yeah, if voters pass question 3, what it would say is that the eggs, veal, and pork sold in Massachusetts, regardless of where they're produced, would have to comply with this very modest animal welfare and food safety standard. And there's lots of standards for this. Right now in Massachusetts, if you want to sell cigarettes in the state, they have to be produced in a fire-safe way. So if you throw them on the ground, they're less likely to cause a fire, regardless of where they're produced. There's lots of examples of these types of laws. And Massachusetts has the right to protect its own citizenry from the animal cruelty problems that are endemic in these factory farms and from the food safety problems that are so rampant in these cage confinement operations as well.
Now, one thing I can also imagine if the yes vote wins here is that you have all these retailers who do business with, suppliers, and they might have to do business differently. Now, isn't that going to be at least disruptive, if not too costly?
The reason it won't be, Chris, is because since question 3 was announced in 2015, Virtually every single major egg retailer in Massachusetts, from BJ's Wholesalers, Walmart, Costco, Dunkin' Donuts, Dollar Tree, and more, has announced that they're just going to go 100% cage-free no matter what. So regardless of what happens with this measure, the egg industry is going to go cage-free. It's going to have better animal welfare and better food safety because the retailers see the writing on the wall. Confining animals in cages that are so cramped that they can barely move an inch their entire lives is so inhumane, it's so extreme, it's just out of step with mainstream values about how animals ought to be treated, and the retailers don't want to associate their brands with that type of abject animal cruelty.
Now, I know a lot of the time we're talking about here products that are from other states, but what about producers in Massachusetts? How are they going to stand on this?
Well, most of the Massachusetts farmers are small family farms who would never use these inhumane practices in the first place. It's really a problem in the bigger industrial agribusinesses. That's why more than 100 Massachusetts family farms endorsed the yes vote on question 3, because they know that the big factory farms that are abusing animals so terribly are both bad for animal welfare, and frankly, they're bad for small family farms too.
Well, finally, we should mention if people want to get some more information about this, you have some things on your website that they can look at.
Yes, absolutely. So the MSPCA and the Humane Society have a website called yeson3.com. And if you want to learn more about why the Boston Globe and the Massachusetts Sierra Club and the MSPCA are endorsing the campaign, just go to yeson3.com and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Paul Shapiro from the Humane Society. We'll have more news in just a moment.